Hello, Homeworthy. I'm Debbie, and I'm so excited to share with you my North Carolina mountain house. So come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
I'm Debbie Mathews, and I am the owner of Debbie Mathews Antiques and Designs. It's a luxury interior design firm as well as antique showroom. I've been a collector of beautiful antiques for 35 years. And I can't tell you how excited I am to share my beautiful and charming cottage with you that's tucked away here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So my husband and I toyed with the idea of purchasing a small little mountain cabin, but we were never really all that serious about it. My husband went to UNC and has a lot of college friends who live in North Carolina, and even a few who have mountain homes in the area. And I think the more we came up here and visited his friends, the more he was really longing to be a part of this community. And it was just kind of a funny story. In December one year, he was scrolling, looking at real estate online, and he saw this cute little house come up for sale. My husband took the bull by the horns. He called the owner as opposed to the agent. And she said, "Oh, I think it's already under, contract. I'm so sorry." But they struck up a friendship. And several months later, he received an email and saw the same house on the market. And this was at the beginning of COVID. So he immediately came in the next room and said, "You're not going to believe it. This house that I was interested in is back on the market." And so once again, he reached out to the owner of the home. So we toured this sweet little cottage. We both fell in love. It was love at first sight. It definitely needed a lot of love and some maybe refreshing, but given my profession, that didn't scare me at all. And so the entire 5-hour drive back to Nashville, we talked nonstop about this house. And sure enough, we purchased it and have just been in love with the house and the surroundings ever since. So the way I would describe the style of this home is it is truly just a mountain cottage vibe. Again, it's a smaller home, but it's got a lot of charm and character for a home that was built in the 1980s. I always refer to this as the little house in the big woods. I know I'm probably aging myself, but I read all of those Laura Ingalls Wilder books back in the day. And our house, even though it's technically on about 2.5 acres, is surrounded by hundreds of acres of woods that cannot be built on. And what I've tried to do is imbue the house with a little bit of elegance and sophistication. And I feel like I've done that by bringing in some significant antique pieces, which of course is something I would do as an antique dealer. My personal aesthetic is definitely more traditional. I do incorporate some transitional elements into my designs, but I like design that doesn't have a true expiration date. Pieces that will withstand the test of time. Welcome to the entry of our home. This is the space that definitely changed more than any other space in the house. I called it, before we started tearing things apart, the Hall of Louvered Doors. Literally, louvered doors line both sides of this entrance hall. This was a solid wall closing off the living room. And we decided, in order to make the space feel larger, we wanted to take out all of those closets and create a built-in desk, drop zone, which would be functional as well as more beautiful. And then we also raised the ceiling in here. So again, a huge change in the space to hang your hats, your coats, drop off your golf shoes. Again, multifunctional, a built-in desk area. I did a little wool skirt here with a little cross-stitch motif, which I thought was kind of fun. But again, you can hide trash cans, briefcases in the desk. But my favorite element in this area is this antique oval window. And this was truly the first piece I bought for the house, and felt like we needed a window here. We wanted more natural light in the space. And I found this window, which is fully functional and operational. And so on a beautiful day, you can get a cross breeze and a lot of light. So this is a fun space. It's changed so much, and I think really makes the living room make more sense. As we step down into the living room, there are so many elements in this space that were really thought about with intention. And, again, how can we make this room live large? How can we accommodate a number of people and entertain? And so those were all the things that were kind of going through my mind. We wanted to open it all up. So we took out the half wall and added in this really pretty bronze colored railing. Again, just to give the space more of an airy, open feel. We wanted to incorporate more wood paneling in the home. Again, it was mostly drywall, and a lot of the homes in this area have paneling absolutely everywhere. So we went ahead and added it to the ceiling, and I created sort of a whitewash effect on the ceiling. Again, wanting to keep the space light and open. We painted the walls in this whole open area Sherwin-Williams moderate white, which just feels light and fresh. The other element that we gave a lot of thought to was this stone fireplace surround and mantle. This is original to the house, but the stone was really dirty. The mantle was kind of wimpy, so we made a lot of changes here. I had the stone professionally cleaned with a wire brush, and it turns out it's grandfather mountain stone, which is actually very valuable. We were told we could sell this stone for a lot of money, but of course I didn't want to dismantle the fireplace surround, but it really just looks so much better now that it's cleaned. And then I overgrouted with a lighter color mortar, again giving the room new life. We added in a much larger, chunkier mantle, which I personally distressed with hammers and chains just to give it an aged look, but this is not really an old piece of wood. So that was kind of a fun project. I worked on that in the garage. But what I love about the stone and the mantle is it just adds a lot of richness and texture to the space, which was important to me, along with the wood. And then talking a little bit about the layout, we wanted a space, as I mentioned before, that was functional, that we could entertain in. And so one of the key elements is this trefoil shaped ottoman. It's on casters. You can move it around. Again, it could be additional seating when people come over. You can scoot it to prop your feet on from really any chair in the space. You can put a tray on it and serve appetizers. So again, just another multifunctional piece in the room, and something that you don't see that shape everywhere. So maybe something just a little unexpected. And I also love the bullion fringe on it. Again, just a little bit whimsical to try to balance with some of the heavier antiques in the room. One of my good friends in Nashville is an artist, and so I commissioned her to do this painting, and it's actually called an encaustic. and that is layers of wax. So when you look at the painting from the side, it's got a lot of waviness, depth and dimension, and it really glows at night. I also like to talk about the furniture and the lighting, of course, because those elements are really, really important to me. This little side table is the first thing you see when you walk in our front door. So I bought this column in an antique mall, never knowing what I was going to do with it. And I had one of the carpenters here in the mountains make a tabletop. And so I think it's kind of fun when you walk in the front door and the first thing you see is just this architectural column as a side table. Again, nobody else has that because it's just something I had created. The other thing you'll notice when you step into the room is this really interesting chandelier. Again, nobody else will have it because it's something that was created. The metal ring was from a wine barrel. These are vintage wooden beads. And then somebody created and added the arms for the lights. And again, another one-of-a-kind piece that I think just gives a lot of interest. It also draws the eye up. And so again, you're feeling that volume. This wingback chair is upholstered in a beautiful cotton and tout wool. Again, the plaid feels very much like a mountain house. This sofa is upholstered in kind of a nubby tweed fabric by Larson, and again, is just very handsome. The whole color palette was inspired by this fabric. This is a Lee Jofa hand-blocked fabric, which means this was made using blocks, and they blocked maybe the green first, and then they came back with the ochre or the brown. So a very time-consuming process, but I loved that fabric. Again, it feels very much nature-inspired. This pair of tub chairs here, they're also covered in a Lee Jofa fabric, and this is actually an indoor-outdoor fabric, and I knew these chairs were going to get a lot of wear and tear because they're so comfortable. Everybody wants to sit here. So again, finding a fabric that would be durable and stain resistant was really important to me. One of my favorite types of fabric is a mohair fabric, and I use that in this kind of rusty color as well as green for the pillows. It's extremely durable. It's got a great sheen to it, and again, feels very much elevated. One of the things I did with this pillow is I added this wool trim in the horizontal pattern, and I did it to mimic the horizontal stripes on the drapery. The drapery is also wool. It's a sheer wool fabric, and it's pretty much the same color as the walls. Again, I didn't want the room to feel enclosed. I wanted it to feel light, and that drapery, I think, just enhances the windows. The windows are so pretty, I didn't want to detract from them. Usually my husband sits at this desk. This is where he likes to sit with his laptop and work. I sit at the desk in the entrance hall, and we can still talk to each other. So it's just kind of nice to have a space for each one of us. This daybed is probably my favorite place in the entire house to lay down and relax. Again, it was important to have a multifunctional piece here. Literally, you can lay down, watch a movie. So I might be laying down here, my husband could lay on the sofa, we tilt the TV, we can both be laying down. But this daybed also serves as an extra bed for guests. And because this house only has 2 bedrooms, we often have overflow. And so this bed serves as another place to sleep. It's a twin-size bed. We have all of the sheets, bedding here in this antique chest. So it really comes in handy, but on a rainy afternoon, to curl up with a book is just the best. So again, my favorite spot in the whole house. This chest is actually an 18th century English piece, probably the finest piece in the whole house. And I really wanted an anchor piece on this wall because you really see through from the front door all the way to this back corner. I love the original brass hardware on it. This lion's head with the ring, it serves as a pull, but just the chunkiness and the dimension, I think really anchor this room more than any other piece in here. My Nashville house, I have mostly French antiques, so it was kind of fun in this space to actually incorporate more English pieces, and that was intentional. And then I try not to get too cutesy because it's a mountain house and have too many antlers, but I did think this mirror was really fun. And so again, put this in a location where you'd see it right when you walked in the front door. As far as art, I like to mix art. I like to bring in some serious pieces as well as some fun pieces. And this is just an owl print. It's not super valuable, but again, I think it's just another nod to the mountains and takes the sophistication down a little bit. It's a little bit more whimsical, and it kind of balances out some of the heavier oil paintings that you'll see hanging in this room. All in all, this is the room where we live. We love this space. We love cozying up to the fire in the cooler months. We love entertaining and having people over, and it really is the heart of the home. It's been quite a renovation journey, and really our little 1,650 square foot home, you might think it wouldn't take very long to renovate. So our renovation took probably 9 or 10 months. The crazy part of the story is that just a couple months after it was finally complete and we'd come and visited a few weekends and stayed here, my husband came back and I got a phone call from him. He rarely calls me while I'm at work, and I thought, oh gosh, I don't know what's going on here. Anyway, I answered and he said, Debbie, you're just not gonna believe it, but our house has flooded. So we only got to stay here 2 times after the first renovation. And the room that I'm sitting in, because it's a sunken living room, acted as a swimming pool. So water flowed from the kitchen where the refrigerator hose had burst into this room. So fortunately, the water damage did not extend to the bedrooms. But our second renovation actually was more thorough than the first, just because we had to rip out drywall down to the studs because the water had been in the house probably for several weeks. People would just joke. They said, wow, you've been renovating for almost 2 years. And I'm sure they were thinking, okay, the smallest house, what are they doing to this house? And so we've had to explain so many times, it's actually been 2 complete renovations, not just 1. So we can laugh about that now, but at the time it was very, very sad. And, you know, just one of those things that we had to really get through. But we're very pleased with the renovations, and the house lives very, very well. I'd like to take you now into the kitchen. And the kitchen is small, but it's mighty. And this is where the flood started. So we did have to get all new cabinetry in the space. It also gave us the ability to slightly move the island, which gives us a little bit more space here in this walkway. Again, I went with another shade of green in the kitchen. This is also a Sherwin-Williams color, and it is called Herbal Wash. And I just love how it turned out, and I wanted to accent the green with some very vintage inspired brass cup pulls and knobs. And then this faucet has a living finish, and it will age over time. But I think that is just another element that feels very cottage-like and old as it ages. I used another quartzite Taj Mahal in the kitchen. This one is creamy with some gold and some light green veining. So again, ties in to the green palette here. One of the things that was a part of the house was this interesting horizontal narrow window in the kitchen. And we debated about getting rid of it. We went back and forth. Ultimately, we decided to keep it. And I'm so glad that we did. In the evening, these plants that are in the window box outside glow. It almost feels like you're looking at an aquarium. And so it's just a really interesting element and a conversation piece when people come over in the evening for the first time. We went back with some glass cabinets here to kind of tie into the window as opposed to painted cabinet doors. And this is where I store a lot of the vintage Fostoria that we use here when we entertain. Moving into the dining room, it was important to me that we be able to accommodate 8 people at this table. So right now there are 6 chairs surrounding the table, but I can bring 2 chairs from the living room in. And so we can have a dinner party for 8 people in here. One of the first pieces that I found was this beautiful dining table. And again, this is another one of those conversation starters because this style table is called a wake table. And wake tables were very prevalent in Ireland and England, and they truly were used to display the deceased on this center section. The sides fold down, so it's a drop leaf, and often they would display the body for several days, and people would pay their respects or pray over the body, and then they would take the body away and serve food on the table. I know that sounds very strange, but that is the history of this style table. And I just love it when a piece has a story. And so it's kind of fun at dinner parties to tell that story. This is another piece that I inherited from my father. And it is just a French cupboard and a great way to display china. It's got a lot of storage. And so it's very functional. We kind of have a bar set up inside here where we store bottles of wine and liquor. And then we have this little area where we may serve wine when we're entertaining. We can set this up as a little serving area. So this is also a functional part of the dining room. One of the things that I like to do is when I do have these darker wood pieces, I like to have something lighter, again, so the space doesn't feel too heavy. So I bought these chairs, which are English, and had somebody paint them or whitewash them. Again, I didn't want everything being dark stained wood, and I think they're just very attractive this way. And again, I used a dark green indoor-outdoor velvet, so I wouldn't have to worry about the seats of the chairs getting stained. I think I mentioned I've got 2 sweet little granddaughters, and I found this fun little high chair at an estate sale. And so we'll often pull it up for one of them when they're here. And it just feels very rustic and is kind of a fun little piece. Again, I mixed in some vintage lighting. This is from Barcelona, Spain. It's metal with a leafy design. And I found some matching candelabra that we also use when we entertain. I love flickering candlelight. I think it adds so much to the mood and to the ambiance. And so just kind of fun to have these candles when we entertain. One of the other things that I like so much about this dining room is there's a lot of natural light in the space, and it also opens up to this porch. And so we're constantly, keeping these doors open. We go in and out a lot to this porch area and probably eat the majority of our lunches out here, weather permitting. And so it's just easy to prepare food in the kitchen and then bring it out here. And you can see it's just all woods, lots of lush, 100-foot trees. So it feels very natural when you're out here and you can't really see any other homes. So we're out here on our own. But I found this great table and chairs at a consignment store here in the mountains. I thought this was just a really interesting centerpiece. It's very heavy, not easy to move, but again, a lot of candles, which I think is just fun. This little area here on the porch is just a space where you can come, relax with a book or a magazine, and rock. Again, just enjoying nature. We don't even really use this lower patio right now, but this is just, another way to make the house feel larger. We have so many porches, a lot of outdoor living, and just another space to sit and enjoy nature, listening to the birds. And this gives you really a bird's eye view of the poplar bark siding that covers the entire house. So all of the older homes in this area use chestnut bark, but I was told that there was a chestnut tree blight in the 1940s. And so now when homes are covered in this bark, they're now using poplar bark. But again, I think it gives a house instant age and charm. I love to talk about how I, created this passion for antiques. It's just kind of a story that tells the history of who I am. So I grew up in Southern California, and my mother's mother, that grandmother, was a huge collector of antiques. Now, she liked antiques that were heavy and Victorian, and that's not really my style, but I would accompany her to garage sales, estate sales, antique shows, flea markets, auctions, and I learned a lot just by watching her. Really how to examine a piece, to pull out all the drawers, to actually sit in a chair. My best friend who lived across the street, her mother was also a huge fan of antiques. And they had moved from the East Coast where primitive antiques were very much the style. And so again, I had another influential woman in my life who was teaching me about antiques and also dragging me to antique malls and estate sales and garage sales. And so I had two women who were coming at it differently because they collected different styles, and I just absorbed it. And they would make it fun. So my best friend and I would go with her mom to an antique mall. And, we might have only been 5 years old. And the way that she would engage us is she would make it a contest. She would say things like, okay, let's see how many Little Red Riding cookie jars you can find. And it became a game. And I thought that was, now that I look back, I think it was absolutely brilliant because she engaged us, she made antique shopping fun. And now I actually do this for a living. And never in a million years did I think this would become my career. When I went to college at UCLA, I was actually pre-med. Couldn't be further from design and hunting for beautiful antiques. But I think I chose medicine at that time because my mother, who I've not mentioned, was sick pretty much my whole childhood. She had Lou Gehrig's disease and couldn't really talk or walk. So I think that's why these other women became so influential. So I think maybe I went off the rails a little bit thinking, okay, I'm going to cure the world, so I'm going to become a doctor. But I think my true calling is design, is antiques, and I found my way back to that. In my 20s, I did open my first antique booth, and just to get my feet wet, and I started attending auctions and just collecting on my own. I had moved to Nashville, so I wasn't near these influential women, and it just was something that I really wanted to try out, and I loved it. And so that's kind of how this all came about. One of the things I love about antiques, and most of the antiques that I carry in my shop, are 200 years old. And so they, for the most part, are not perfect. Many of these pieces were, handmade. So again, some imperfection there. They lived in a time or in spaces where there was no central heat and air. Many of the pieces that I purchase come over on a boat. So, these pieces have lived a full life, but I kind of like the imperfection because I think it allows people to relax in a space. It gives everybody permission just to be a little bit more forgiving. And I love the charm and character that comes with some of these older pieces. Sometimes you'll look, I buy a lot of antique writing desks, and you can see where people penned letters in the past. There might be ink stains on the top of a desk, or you can see, maybe where their quill or pen left marks on the desk. I've even seen where hearts have been carved in the top of pieces. So again, I feel like they're conversation starters. I feel like antiques give a room authenticity, history, depth. And so even if you can only afford one fine piece, I think it can make a huge impact and instantly elevate everything else in the room. Hello friends, welcome to the primary bedroom suite. It's really one of my favorite spaces in the home. For those of you who don't know me, yellow is my favorite color, and it's such a happy color that I really wanted to wrap the room in this beautiful yellow as well as soft sage green. And the inspiration for this room was just this sweet little embroidered pillow. It's a Chelsea Textiles pillow, and I felt like it really embraced nature. And so I just teed off of the colors in this pillow to design the room. One of the things about this space that changed dramatically during the renovation is the ceiling. The ceiling was not vaulted like this before. It was just an 8-foot ceiling, and so the room felt so much smaller. The other thing about this bedroom is that it didn't encompass this whole space. The bedroom really stopped just right here. There wasn't this little seating group. This was enclosed and was actually part of the guest bedroom. And we just thought it made more sense to open this bedroom up. This bedroom is attached to our screen porch. And we didn't like the idea of having to go through the guest bedroom to get to the screen porch. So this room did undergo a lot of change. Again, we vaulted the ceiling, we added a beam, we closed off, there was another door over here. Again, my favorite colors are yellow and green, and I found this beautiful fabric. It's made in Italy by a company named Bussati. And Bussati has been weaving just beautiful textiles since 1842. They even furnish a lot of linens for the White House. But they've got a weaving technique where the fabric isn't printed. They actually use different colors of thread. So the fabric has a lot of texture to it. But this fabric has beautiful acorns and a leafy design that just really gives a nod to this area. I used the same fabric on the Euro pillows, and one of the details that I just think turned out so beautifully, it almost looks like hand embroidery around the perimeter of the pillows And this is something that Busati can do. And so I love ordering their textiles, not only for myself, but for client projects. I also use this bamboo inspired headboard, and you will see a lot of bamboo and rattan used throughout the house. I feel like it's very much in tune with the mountains, kind of that rustic charm. And one of the things I like to do in my design projects is repeat elements. So like I said, you will see bamboo again as we walk through the house. I love how the window over here looks out over the garden, and there's some beautiful terraced gardens outside. And I love opening up the drapery in the morning and seeing what's in bloom. And as a way to embrace the outdoors, I also found these pressed botanicals. So it kind of feels like the garden extends this way. You're seeing the flowers outside, and then I hung this set of 4 pressed botanicals on the wall. I feel like they're kind of vintage looking, and again, kind of continue the garden. As you know, I love to incorporate antiques into every room. And I found this great pair of crusty old Bombay chests, and they had the green painted top. So I thought, well, that's perfect here in the bedroom. One of the other things I like to do when I have a lot of brown furniture in a room, I also like to bring in some painted pieces so the room doesn't start to feel heavy. And I feel like these light, crusty pieces were just the perfect solution in this space, because as you can see, the headboard is a dark stained wood, as are these other case pieces in the space. And we'll wander over here and take a look. So this is a bookcase that I found. It's got these ionic columns and this fluting on the sides. You can actually pull this out for additional surface space. And it's just a great place to display our children's photos, just lots of family photos. I think it's just nice to have those in the bedroom where my husband and I can look, see the beautiful faces of all of our children and grandchildren. This piece is actually Italian. It's walnut, and I loved the design of it. It's got these great diamond-shaped embellishments on the cabinet doors, and is very functional. But this kind of grounds the space. I don't ever like a TV that just floats and doesn't have a piece of furniture below it. And then because of the vaulted ceiling, I thought it would be kind of fun to hang the basket above the TV just to draw the eye up so you would feel the volume in the room. This little sitting area is just a wonderful space. These chairs are Baker chairs. They're covered in Cotton and Tout fabric, and they swivel. And so it's kind of nice in the afternoon, especially if we have guests, to have a place where we can escape with a good book, take a rest. My husband, you'll often see him in one of these chairs. He can sit there, he can angle the TV and watch golf in the afternoon. So this is just a really cozy little space that usually just the two of us use. Again, I'll point out, I found this antique little ottoman or stool, and I painted the stained wood the wall color. Again, I didn't want the room to be too heavy with all dark stained furniture, so I painted the legs, and then I found this great fabric. It looks like wood grain, and that's called faux bois. Faux bois in French just means false wood. And you'll see that element repeating itself throughout the home. But found this green faux bois fabric, and I feel it just really ties the space together. One of my favorite design elements in any space is drapery. I feel like nothing transforms a space more than drapery. And here in the mountains, drapery is not only beautiful, but it's highly functional, because when we leave, especially in the winter, it's just another layer of insulation. I have all the drapery here in the mountains lined with something called bump, and it's like a heavy blanket. So it really adds insulation and keeps the cold out in the winter. This is a beautiful wool fabric with just a very charming little trim on the leading edge. They're all fully functional drapery, and again, keep this room nice and cozy in the winter. One of the things you'll see throughout the house is one-of-a-kind lighting. I always joke I'm a bit of a lighting snob. I don't want the lighting in my design projects to look like everybody else's house. So I found this pair of chandeliers. They're from Europe. And you can see they've got flowers and leaves. Again, just another nod to the outdoors. Gardening is huge in this mountain community. And so I love the fact that these gilt metal chandeliers had flowers. I think they're just really unique and different and make the space. The pair of lamps are more transitional. They're not antique, obviously, on an acrylic base, but I like, as you know, I talked about earlier, keeping a home current and bringing in maybe more transitional elements in the last layer. And so that's what I did with these beautiful gold lamps. So I like to mix it up with vintage and newer pieces. I also just love art. I love vintage art. I love thick oil paintings. I love watercolors. This is a mountain landscape. It was done by a Russian artist. And I just thought the colors were perfect for this space. The piece that hangs over the bed is an older piece. And again, it just shows a mountain lakeside scene. I thought the frame was beautiful. So I really wanted that to be the focal point. So as you walk down the hallway into the bedroom, you would see this beautiful oil painting, and that might take center stage. Now, the biggest piece of art in the room is something that I found at a flea market, believe it or not. I thought the lush trees, the countryside spoke to the serene sort of vibe in this space. And I loved the size, and I actually got it for a great deal. And the frame I thought suited the room as well. It's similar wood tones to some of the furniture in the space. So I feel like with the different art pieces, the antiques, but then the light colors, this room is very soothing, it's serene, and it feels current, even though it is anchored by antiques. Now I'd like to show you the primary bathroom. This is another space that changed dramatically. Again, the previous owner was just a single person, and the bathroom just had a single sink. And so what we did was we stole some space from the entrance hall to create double vanities in this little bathroom. We designed all new cabinetry, which I think turned out really well. We added little bracket feet, that detail. We also added a window. There was no window in this bathroom. There was just a solar tube light that came down through the ceiling. And it was really, really important to me that there be a bathroom window. And so we added that. It's not large, but it definitely makes the space just feel better and more open. I incorporated a pair of these Carver's Guild very sculptural mirrors, which I think are kind of fun. And then these are actually exterior lanterns that I hung on the walls in here. And I love how the bronze and the brass finish tie together all the other finishes in the bathroom. As I mentioned, we enlarged the bathroom almost 2 feet so that we could accommodate a larger shower. And, so we basically gutted the previous bathroom, moved it out, and I decided just to go with simple white subway tile because, again, trying to make these smaller, rooms feel larger. So everything in the bathroom is fairly neutral with the exception of the cabinetry. I painted the cabinets. It's a Sherwin-Williams color called Felt Sage, and I think it works perfectly in here. And then I chose a quartzite. It's a Taj Mahal, but this particular slab has a lot of green in it, and I think just ties together beautifully with the cabinetry. And then I had a little skirted vanity stool made, and again, that same sort of yellow and green color, and it just ties the whole space together. Right off the primary suite is this just amazing screen porch. I love it out here. I feel like I'm truly outside with nature. One of the first pieces of furniture or dining set that I purchased is this Brighton pavilion. It's bamboo and rattan, and I felt like it just looked like a mountain house. Again, one of my very first purchases, and I found this great jasper fabric that I upholstered the seat cushions in. And we'll often have lunch out here. Sometimes I'll put hors d'oeuvres or appetizers on the table in the evening. It's just a great spot to unwind at the end of the day and listen to the little waterfall that's in the backyard. So anyway, this is just like another room in the house, and again, helps this house to feel larger than it actually is. We love sitting out here. I found these great little placemats that just look like twigs. It's kind of funny. I found this silverware at a flea market, and it's vintage Washington forge, but I love the wood handles, the little brass rivets, and so had to have that. I also found at a flea market these dishes. They're Royal Worcester from England, and again with the ferns and the leaves, I thought they would be perfect for the mountain house, and they're called Wild Harvest. So again, trying to keep everything connected, everything feeling very mountain-like. As we go through the house, you'll see a lot of stripes and plaids used throughout. So all of those things together helped us to create a unified tablescape. I also have a set of vintage Fostoria. And the thing I love about Fostoria, it was made, I think, in the early 1900s up through the 1980s, but it's really heavy glassware. It's sturdy and it's easy to grip because of this kind of diamond block pattern. So I have lots of pieces of that. You'll see those throughout the home as well. This candelabra over here, I think, was the second item I purchased for this house. And I just thought it's almost like a piece of sculpture. And in the evening, when you light the candles, it really is just a special moment over here in the corner. As you wander toward the backyard, there's a cozy little gathering spot that we like to hang out in the evening, have a glass of wine. Again, I carried the bamboo furniture theme. A lot of this is vintage Brighton Pavilion. And, as I mentioned before, we bought this home during the pandemic. And it was very difficult to get furniture quickly. And so I found it was easier to find vintage pieces and have them recovered rather than wait a year or a year and a half to order new furniture. I really like how all these pieces came together, because the little set with the 4 chairs I bought from one vendor. I bought these 2 pieces, this console and coffee table from another vendor, the sofa and 2 chairs from yet another vendor. So I kind of put all of these pieces together like a puzzle, but think it actually turned out well. And then the last piece was this bamboo wingback chair. I just think it's great. I love the height of it out here. And then I use this indoor-outdoor nubby, almost like a tweed fabric, to upholster all the cushions, just to give me a basic neutral ground. And then I used an indoor-outdoor velvet to welt all the cushions, just to give them a little bit of something extra. And I love the green and how it really pops. And then use some of that same green velvet for some pillows out here. And then had some lumbar pillows and square pillows for the sofa made out of this really woodsy Colfax and Fowler fabric. So I feel like everything ties together really well. It feels very intentional. Again, we do have a TV out here. We rarely turn it on. It was so funny because my kids kept saying, you've got to have a TV out on that porch, because once you're finished playing golf, you can then come sit on the porch and watch more golf. So they gave it to us one year for Christmas. But again, this place is just the best to observe nature and then look out on these enormous native rhododendrons that are in the backyard. And I feel like it's just so private and so wonderful to be out here. You don't feel like you've got anybody else around. You might hear the occasional car, but you really are just focused on the sounds of nature, which for me, that's what nourishes my soul and gives me energy, is listening to the birds, watching the butterflies. You can see a hummingbird. That's what this area is known for. Beautiful gardens, lush, thick rhododendrons. And this is just a wonderful spot to view all of it. You can walk out here and see this vintage faux bois table and chairs. And I mentioned there are a number of faux bois elements, whether it's fabric or this French concrete furniture. Again, it just means false wood and is a nod to nature. And this is really one of my favorite things in the house. I found this at an antique market and just fell in love with it. And I think when I sell the house, it will have to stay, because it took 6 men to move this table in. And it's just perfect for this spot. So again, we can open up the door to the screen porch, sit out here, have a glass of wine, and enjoy nature, as well as this little water feature, this waterfall, which just adds so much to the joy of sitting on the screen porch or being outside. I'm excited to show you the terrace gardens as we walk up. Again, that's something else that people really embrace here in this mountain community, is gardening, and things grow beautifully here. I mean, this is really a rainforest, and so everything is so lush because we get so much rain. This, again, is a fairly small bathroom, but it needed to serve 2 different purposes. It's not only the powder room, but it's the ensuite bathroom for our guest bedroom. So come on in and I'll show you the renovations and changes that we made to this small space. The first thing we did was we took out the vanity that was here, and I found this beautiful antique bamboo cabinet, and it came with this white marble top. So it was just perfect. And I had the carpenters up here, you know, cut into it to accommodate a sink. These were actually just candle sconces that I had electrified. They belonged to my best friend's mother, and she gifted them to me many, many years ago. And so again, just a sentimental piece here in the bathroom, and it always reminds me of her when I'm in here. And then I always love a Louis Philippe mirror. We sell a lot of these in our showroom, but I love the simplicity, and I think it adds a touch of elegance to this powder room slash ensuite bathroom. And then I found this great little hat or coat rack. It's Victorian bamboo. It ties in really well with the Victorian bamboo cabinet, and I think makes the space feel very cohesive. And then also incorporated an antique toll tray above that's hand painted with birds and flowers. So again, a very simple bathroom, but a lot of thought went into the space. The color that I used in here is Benjamin Moore Van Cortlandt Blue. I absolutely love this color. I've used it on a number of client projects, but it was really important to me to incorporate some blue in the house because blue is my husband's favorite color. He went to UNC Chapel Hill. He's all about UNC blue. And so I decided that our powder room and guest suite should incorporate a lot of blue to make him happy. I did a custom shower curtain out of this blue leafy fabric. I love a custom shower curtain, and I think it just adds some softness into the bathroom. A lot of times bathrooms just have a lot of hard surfaces, and so it's just something soft and pretty. And then a Turkish prayer rug is just when you get out of the bathtub, you know, a mat to dry your feet on. So again, a very small bathroom, but very well thought out. We're now going to walk into the guest bedroom, and I am so pleased with how this room turned out. Again, it's a very small room, but it's got all of what I consider to be the most important design elements for a guest bedroom. So I always tell my clients, a guest bedroom should have at least one chair where your guests can sit down to put their shoes on. And this particular wicker chair belonged to my great-grandmother. And I've had it since I was about 22 years old. I've painted it a number of different colors, but I really like this kind of glossy, tortoisey brown that I painted it on when I brought it into this house. So again, I think a guest bedroom should always have a chair. The other thing I think a guest bedroom should have is maybe a little writing desk. And so we incorporated that next to the bed. The reason why I think a guest bedroom should have a writing desk is because so many guests will bring a laptop, and it gives them a place to maybe sit, look at their computer, or because the guest bathroom is so small, it could also be a place for the woman to sit and do her makeup. So again, another multifunctional piece can really make the space more, just functional for your guests. This room was based around this fabric, which I have always loved. It's a Lee Joffa floral. But one of the things that I really loved about this fabric is that it has this wonderful border. And I love finding fabrics that have a border because there are so many ways that you can embellish drapery, bedding, pillows with a border. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that we did. So as we walk over here to the drapery, I had my drapery workroom cut the border off and then reapply it to the leading edge of these drapes. So it's almost functioning like a trim on the leading edge. The other drapery detail that you'll see is I had these custom made ties, and they're attached where the drapery is pleated, just to give a little bit more of a cottage vibe that I think really makes the space. You'll see those same ties here on the custom duvet cover. And again, used another striped fabric, cut on the bias to create those ties. And I think they just turned out really, really well. You'll see that same detail here on the pillow shams. So came up with the idea of doing ties here on the side of these pillows as well, so that everything, again, ties together. And then I found this great striped fabric. It's by York, and had this bolster made, and then this sweet little pillow, again, out of this floral fabric that I love so much. The desk chair, I incorporated both the York striped fabric on the seat and then the Lee Joffa fabric on the chair back. And so tried to just make it very whimsical and fun and bright and cheerful for a guest bedroom. There are a couple of other pieces in here that have sentimental value. This iron bed was a piece from my dad's house. And so it's been kind of fun to repurpose it, use it here in our mountain house. But I thought it was absolutely perfect for this room. It's got the little birds perched on the top of the iron posts. So again, a nod to nature. This Turkish rug that's floating on top of the wool rug was also my dad's. So I feel like this room tells a story about pieces that have been in my family and mean a lot. They're just very special. And it reminds me of my dad when I walk in here. The writing desk is French, and it's got these great little hoof feet on it. And the other bedside table is Italian and just has a really rich walnut patina. So we've got, again, some dark brown wood furniture, but in order to keep the space from feeling, you know, like a museum, I added in these more kind of fun transitional lamps, again, that have that leaf motif, these patterned fermoy shades. So again, elements that keep the space fresh and light so as not to feel old and dated. One of the things I like to do on design projects is continue a color, maybe in a different way. So while the bathroom is painted all Van Cortlandt blue, in this room, just the trim, the baseboards, and the louvered closet doors. So bringing that blue in here, but making the room feel a little bit lighter and painting the walls more of a cream color. Lastly, I'll just point out this little chandelier. My husband doesn't love this chandelier, but I think it kind of makes the space. It's got the same sort of ochre color that's in this fabric. It's just a teeny little fixture. And I think, again, is one of those that's just one of a kind. Nobody else will have that. But I think it just adds a lot to the space. Our guests enjoy staying here. They feel like it's very cozy and homey. And so I hope you've enjoyed seeing it as well. Home means so many different things to me. And sometimes it's hard to separate what home means to me personally versus professionally. So I'll start with professionally. Sometimes I look at my house as a laboratory where I can experiment with things that I can't really experiment with in a client's home. So whether that's a new vendor, a new fabric, a new design, a new drapery design. So I think it's kind of fun when I'm working on my own house to have that flexibility that I might be a little too nervous to tackle with a client. But personally, I think a home really tells the story of the people who live there. And so when I'm designing a home for somebody else, I really try to get at the root of who they are. And so I think that story really encompasses people's past. I try to always incorporate sentimental pieces of my clients, maybe family heirlooms, which I think make the home story even more interesting. So again, bringing pieces from the past, sharing heritage. I also think our home reflects how we live on a daily basis. And, what is comfortable? What brings us joy? Do books bring us joy? Do we want to surround ourselves with books? Do we work from home? Do we need to have a special place where we feel content to work and comfortable? And then I also think home is about the future. How can we accommodate our home for a growing family? Or in my case, I have 2 sweet little granddaughters who come and visit us up here or visit us in our Nashville home. And so how can we prepare our homes to encompass, what life might look like even 5 years from now? So I think our home is kind of the crossroads of the past, the present, and the future.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.